Welcome back to the Morning Brief on Channels Television. And so we're starting with the big conversation. The much anticipated cabinet shakeup has finally happened. And you know, prior to this time, the president had made it clear that ministers that were not delivering on the promises of the administration will be, will receive the big stick. And the big stick has been wielded finally. We've seen reassignments. We've seen some ministers dropped. We've seen ministers redeployed. We've also seen repurposing, as Jeffrey has said, mergers of new ministries. So we wonder, has this met the expectations of Nigerians, of particularly pundits that have been monitoring this process? Let's quickly take a look at, this shakeup. Let's have a close look at it. The sacked ministers, of course, Uju Ken Ohanenye, Minister of Women Affairs. We have a new minister there now, Lola Adejohn, Ministry of Tourism. Professor Tahir Maman, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Minister of Education. Abdullahi Muhammad Gwarzo, who formerly held Ministry of State, Housing and Urban Development. And of course, Dr. Jamila Bio Ibrahim also is no longer Minister of Youth Development. Ministers reassigned. Dr. Yusuf Tanko Sununu has moved to Ministry of State for Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction. Dr. Morufu Olatunji Alausa is now the Minister of Education. Barrister Bello Mohammed Goronyu is now Minister of State for Works. Professor Abubakar Momo retains or is now the Minister of Niger Regional Development. Of course, we know that the Ministry of Niger Delta Development has been scrapped, and we now have a supervising Ministry of Regional Development that will oversee all of those commissions. Uba Megari Hamadu is now the Minister of State for Regional Development, and Dr. Doris Uzoka Anite has been moved to the Ministry of State for Finance, to become Minister of State for Finance. Senator John Owaneno has been moved to the Ministry of State, to the Ministry of Trade and Development, but will be the Minister of State. Just a few more. Iman Sulaiman Ibrahim is now the Minister of Women Affairs, and Ayodele Olawande is now the Minister for Youth Development. The ministers designate, a few of them. Dr. Nentawe Yilwatda is now the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction. Muhammadu Megari Dingyadi, who served in the former administration, by the way, is now the Minister of Labour and Employment. Bianca Odinaka Odumegu Ojukwu is now the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs. Dr. Jumoke Oduwole is now the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. Just to cover a few of the redeployments, new appointments, and of course, the high point being those who have been sacked. And joining us to have this conversation is Mr. Chibuzo Okereke, public policy analyst, who joins us from our Abuja studio. Good morning and welcome to the program, Mr. Okereke. Thank you so much for coming through.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's good to have you. And I believe a good place to start would be that, of course, this has been much anticipated, but did it meet your expectations, particularly with the repurposing of the ministries, the merger of the ministries, because that was also some of the high point of the conversation. And in terms of the efficiency or lack of it of some ministries that were being looked critically at, did it also meet your expectations?
Well, what I would say first is that this is probably a progress from what we had in the last administration, where ministers were left or even abandoned in office for 8 years as if they were elected representatives of the people. In terms of whether this is major, I think that sacking of only 5 ministers represents just 11% shake-up within the system out of 45. And for me, there's good thinking around the policy, but it's a piecemeal approach. There are also some of the new people that have come on board. I would say that cite many people because of their professionalism. For instance, Dr. Jumoke, who is now the Minister for Trade and Investment, having worked in the last 7 years as the PEBEC chairperson, working on the ease of doing business environment, and now going to take the infrastructure they have built within that policy sector for trade facilitation, trade negotiation, and investment. I think that was a good decision by the president. But what, if I was advising the president, having Senator Eno as the trade and investment, I don't think probably that will serve the right purpose. Maybe he should have joined Festus Kayamo, SAN, at aviation and oversee the non-aeronautical component of the Ministry of Aviation and Aerospace Development. Also, a good decision within this is merging that of tourism and creative economy. Of course, the purpose of culture, arts, and the creative economy is to bolster your tourism. So there was no need to have those two ministries in the first place. So imagine it. And in any case, the Minister of Tourism at the time, in the last 1 year, I don't think any Nigerian can say this is where she has been. So we couldn't even point out some of the major steps within that sector. Also, if you look at the issue of Ministry of Regional Development, I would say that it's also unnecessary to create such ministry, and that also underpins the challenge we are having with our federalism and maybe the weakness of the local government and the subnational levels to carry the burden of governance. If you have regional development bodies, you don't necessarily need a regional ministry at the federal level to deal with these issues. Maybe if you look at also the current composition, the Ministry of Special Duties seem not to be working, or probably they don't have portfolio of assignment to execute. And some of these efforts of government are under special intervention. So maybe Special Duties Ministry, instead of creating a new regional one, would have been responsible for overseeing the regional commissions that have been created. The same thing applies with that of livestock development. I mean, since we now have regional development commissions and under the Land Use Act, which is the main issue around this livestock development and value chain, the Land Use Act empowers the governors, and the governors are advisory board members in the regional commissions. So we would have had the livestock ministry embedded within the mandate of regional commission bodies and overseen by that of special duties. Since we are dealing with cost of governance, trying to bring efficiency and more effectiveness in the way we address, governance issue in the country. That of youth also very critical. For whatever challenge, I think the Minister of Youth did not embody the spirit, the energy, and the innovative abilities of the Nigerian young people. So maybe I think there was need for a major shake-up around there, elevating the Minister of State for Youth. We'll watch and see. But most of us expected almost 50% turnaround within the ministry's shake-up, because in the last 1 year, as the president had observed himself, it also became difficult for the ministers to go out and communicate government policies, talk about what they are doing. Most of them were not just accessible by the people and completely ignored many media calls to engage. So I think that on that ground, the progress, has been made. There are a lot of other expectations that Nigerians have, and policy commentators like us also have, to make sure that things are working. And within the design of our governance system, we must begin to realize that ministers do not operationalize policies. They are policy promoters, advisors to president, and policy supervisors. So our energy should really be on getting our agencies to work more effectively. And I must also be on Ministry of Power, Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy. Communications needs strengthening, and a lot more ministries too, if we are going to get it right.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm Mr. So we've seen a couple of things that have happened in the last few hours as far as this is concerned, as you've alluded to. Sometimes you even wonder why certain ministries need Minister of State. So ministries like Ministry of Youth Development, why do we need two ministers? Minister of the FCT? Why do we need 2 ministers? But at the end of the day, we've also seen that the lady has been taken away because you hardly see her. The boisterous personality, perhaps, of the FCT minister may not have allowed her to shine and all of that. But that's another kettle of fish. What I want to find out from you, the president is a politician. So how much of politics played out here in terms of the political consideration and the technical value being brought to the table? Like a lot of people have said, including you, have said, for you, your numbers are quite high. Half of the people that are ministers maybe should have been removed or reassigned. I'm not sure what you mean by 50%, because we see underperformance across ministers. Maybe we'll get to that list of yours that you think should have been removed entirely. But what political consideration as against technical value addition do you think the president looked at in making this decision? Well, I know you're not the president, but from what you see and where you sit.
Well, that's a good question. Now, first of all, the president is a politician and is also the president of the Republic of Nigeria, with both capacity to administer politics and also capacity to administer governance. So I would say I pointed out the appointment of Dr. Jumoke to Ministry of Trade and Investment. I think for me, that shows also a good thinking that politicians maybe can see what is right and good and take decision to bring such a person on board. In terms of moving the Minister of Trade and Investment to that of the Minister of State for Finance, I also think that maybe that accounts for good decision in the fact that, one, the Ministry of Finance has been manned by fiscal-oriented expert minister, and there's need for complementarity and blending with fiscal and monetary policy. Having Dr. Ozoka, who has monetary policy background, join him as Minister of State could account for a decision that is probably technical and for governance effectiveness. Moving Senator Eno from sports, who declared himself after the Olympic that the sports ministry cannot bite, can't even do anything, that everything about sports rests on the federations. So probably he is the one who may have opened the doorway for the president to scrap that ministry completely. But what I find moving him to trade and investment could be a political decision. Maybe, like I said, he could have been moved to aviation as Minister of State, and he will focus on the non-aeronautical component of the aerospace development, which is not quite receiving attention. The minister there is doing a lot with the other components, but that of the aerospace development, where we can create a value chain, nothing much is happening there, and maybe that. So also appointing the former governorship candidate of, I believe, of the APC in Plateau State, Dr. Tawanda also, to Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. I believe there is a challenge there. Not that he doesn't have capacity to execute the affairs of that, but also there is a reason in the last 8 years or from 2016 to date, we've had women govern that office. It's also because of the nature of the humanitarian crisis that we face, our culture and tradition. He will not be able to enter certain places in the north, console the women that have been affected, because from statistics, women are most affected with some of these humanitarian activities. So maybe a consideration should be looked at in that regard, so that we will have a complete balance. But there's nothing a president who is seeking a second tenure can do that will, even if he consolidates on governance effectiveness, is also to reinforce political power, because he's the president and he wants to retain office in 2027. So you can't remove politics from any decision.
Well, Mr. Okereke, the same question can be asked about the ministers that were sacked. So how much of political consideration informed this, the choice of this list, and how much of performance or lack of it informed the choice of this list? And you can ask that question specifically of two ministries. the former Minister of Women Affairs, Uju Kennedy Ohanenye, the former Minister of Education, Professor Tahir Maman. Perhaps you have some interesting views also to share about the other names on that list.
Well, what I would say first is political consideration, yes, performance, yes. Both variables contribute to why some of these ministers were laid off. The Minister of Education, for instance, we have to continue to look at this in terms of our federal design, and the subnational bodies, and where education is within the legislative list. If you look at it closely, federal government are simply in charge of federal institutions, regulations from the NUC and the unity schools. And from what we have gathered, the minister there, yes, the former vice chancellor, former director of the Nigerian Law School or so, but over the last 1 year, the major policy he decided to bring out could have been one of his major setbacks, because the policy was not progressive. At the time we are talking about over 20 million out of school children, and the major effort seen from that ministry is about how we can limit the age for people to go into university, no matter how brilliant they have performed. I think, and a lot of other issues where, just like in the Sports Commission, in education, we have similar thing. The unions are so powerful, they decide a lot of things that even makes the education ministry unable to make a positive impact. But the man that has been deployed there, who is the former Minister of State for Health, Dr. Latunji, I believe, is bright, and maybe he will be able to make some impact within that system. For the Minister of Women Affairs, Dr. Ohanenye Kennedy, she has been in the news several times for both the good and other reasons. She's one of the ministers most people are credited to be effective, adopted a different approach in women ministry in terms of empowering people. And she raised a lot of complaints, I believe, that will not go down well with politicians. And also, engage face off with the House of Rep committee and a lot of other things. So probably issue of temperament, addressing how certain public offices should be handled could have come. But also there is this news about our office also not quite getting along well with the office of the First Lady. So maybe there is need to even scrap anything women affairs. The First Ladies should be appointed to oversee that responsibility. That way we can see them bring their women power to move things. And because they are spouses to the president or governors, maybe the ministry will get a better attention. And like that of tourism, I told you, most people did not even know we had Minister of Tourism. With all due respect, maybe she tried to do a lot, but the way the ministry has been balkanized, it became difficult for her impact to be noticed. So on the whole, there are issues of performance, there are also issues of politics.
All right, Ms. Okereke, I know that we had the Minister of Tourism sometime. I know at some point, without making excuses for her, but just for public information, she had health challenges for a period and all of that. But the decision has been made. But at the end of the day, it's about delivering good governance. That is the bottom line. Who should be in cabinet to help the president deliver his mandate that he's promised Nigerians that he will do to make the life of people better. Look at the way things are in the country. The policies of government that have been executed since he came into office has had a lot of impact, especially negative impact. And they are saying this is in the short term, and the long term is going to get better. But that argument is back and forth between the people and the government. So I said that to bring to the fore the fact that if the president sees what is going on in the country, and I'm sure he takes it seriously, who are the people, in your view, that are still in cabinet that shouldn't be there?
Well, I would say that there are a lot of considerations for appointing people to cabinet. I wish it's a development and governance and technical decision, but it's not so because of politics. So mostly the intervening variables include political support, political support by key stakeholders, contribution to electoral victory, capacity also, because that somebody is a politician does not mean it cannot be a technical person. So I think that these are the issues. If you look at marine and blue economy, I want to believe that it is only political consideration that is probably respectively keeping that. This is a very novel ministry that have just been created that should bring revolution in terms of our coastal value chain economy, marine economy, and the blue economy. We are not seeing that, and the president, there are other ways to compensate political associates and actors that should be looked at. Every Nigerian today worries about the Ministry of Power. In one of your introductions, you talked about a motion that had been taken by the House of Rep to investigate the failure of the national grid, almost every time. That of power, it has been a very big challenge. That ministry should also be looked at. What are the hindrances? What are the issues? How can the person be supported or be shown without any personal thing, because we're analyzing governance impact. There's nothing personal about it, but Nigerians can attest that we have not seen a policy shift that is progressive in the Ministry of Power, and that should change, drastically. Even this particular blue economy, creative economy, art and culture that we have merged now, we should also look at that ministry properly and ensure that the people there are fit for purpose and ready to deliver. It's not enough to roll out Destination 2030. What are the low-hanging fruit? What are we delivering today to bolster culture and tourism in Nigeria and attract foreign direct investment? If you look at communications, I think communications also need some kind of reinforcement and support. There are issues here and there. For instance, we spent billions of dollars to build a Digital Bridge Institute to churn out manpower in tech industry and probably take over the tech space in Africa. However, only 2 or 3 of these institutes are working now. That of Lagos, I believe, Abuja, and the Kano that was recently attacked. That of Enugu in the southeast region has been taken over by grasses. And this is a full institution, completely built with generators, with halls, classrooms, hostel accommodation, and what have you, but it's in a state of comatose at this time. It has never functioned since the day it was built. And that of other Digital Bridge Institute across other zones. There are also issues within other components of the communication sector. So I believe that also needs proper reinforcement by the president. He may not completely lay them off, but he can reinforce maybe those who need Minister of State to support them and take over a component of their responsibility, or other experts can come in to play a role. But more importantly, it's good that the president should utilize the Policy Coordination and Result Delivery Office more effectively. Devoid of politics, let us see a governance system that is accountable and that is able to deliver to the people result that is based on empirical assessment. Other political considerations can play on the ground, but delivering result and governance. And I believe this is probably why the president, after 1 year, has made this decision, though piecemeal, better effort than what we saw in the last 8 years of President Buhari.
And Mr. Okeke, some of the last few points that you have made underscore my next question, which is about whether or not this cabinet shakeup reflects the administration's commitment to implementing the Steve Orosai report on cutting the cost of governance. And some would, as a result of that, ask, do we need the ministers of state, for instance? And we've seen about 4 reassignments of some ministers to becoming Minister of State. And you said earlier, some things about the livestock development. Some would ask, what is the need of that additional ministry in the first place? Because agriculture, in the first place, there are arguments against it about the activity being domiciled in the states, particularly with support of the Land Use Act. So would you be supporting the advocacy for a scrapping of the Ministry of Agriculture such that the funds can be deployed in addition to other allocations, to those states where the activity is taking place?
Yeah, this argument has been on for a long time in terms of who are there citizens of state or federal government? Why do we seem to be dividing Nigeria across federal and state and what have you? Who should be responsible for what? Is the major challenge, that affecting development planning and even actual development in the country. There seem to be overwhelming federal institutions playing the role that state government and even local government are supposed to play. At the point we are economically, both macro consideration and micro issues, I would not advocate for scrapping of the Ministry of Agriculture. However, there are a lot of agencies under agriculture. We have to reevaluate their contribution to economy, maybe to research, to development, and how they are intertwined and show kind of technical support to state agencies and local government agencies. We cannot have federal agencies just operate, at the federal level, especially when the output of their policy decisions and actions are supposed to benefit state and local government. So there should be a kind of integration at that level so that whatever policy output they produce is consummated at the state and the local government level. That is the big challenge we are facing, today. In terms of this Federal Ministry of Livestock Development, I can argue that it can function more effectively within the regional development commissions, because we have seen that effort to create special ranches didn't work. They tried to amend some Water Resources Agencies Act to create special area for this issue of livestock development. It didn't work. Yes, attention on livestock can probably bolster the economy of that sector and develop us beyond the issue of cows. We can go into goats. Attention can come. But what really is Southeast Development Commission, Northeast Development Commission, if this important component of our development cannot be embedded within those regional commissions and they drive it and develop it, and then we'll have the Minister of Special Duties supervise them. That is what is key. I believe that we should do in that respect. And you mentioned about Orosaya report, 2013 or so. Up till now, since that time, about 500 and so we have created more agencies. Do we need them? Most of them, we need them. Some of them that have been in existence, we also look at their mandate. Unfortunately, we make laws in this country. Some of the laws we make are supposed to have sunset clauses and not live in perpetuity. That is the biggest challenge. Certain laws are terminal laws. When you bring them on board, they function for a period, and then the sunset clause is supposed to apply. And some people start saying, we're going to lose our job. Let us do something and make sure it continues to live. That is the biggest challenge. And that challenge goes to the National Assembly. When agencies are to be created, we look at the value of that agency. Should it live in perpetuity? Should they have sunset clauses to make sure that within a time period they deliver their mandate and they exit at this stage so that we'll stop carrying more load within our system? But I really think that The way Nigeria is structured today, we need a more governance relationship, not just political, between the federal, state, and local government, so that we can drive development, properly. Like that of Ministry of Housing and Urban. You can tell that we need that ministry to function with the local. If we develop housing at the local government level, we'll bolster the rural economy. That's not happening, and it's a big challenge.
And indeed, there's a need for more, connectedness between these ministries and the people, such that, the promises to deliver on the dividends of democracy are felt by the people who elected the elected that appointed these appointees in the first place. We want to thank you so much, Mr. Chibuzo Okereke, for your time and contribution on the program. Mr. Okereke is a public policy analyst. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.
And from this point, we move on to the next leg of our conversation. We'll be looking at that sore thumb in terms of security in the Southeast, the sit-at-home order. Stay with us, we'll be right back.